welcome to Unlimited, and once again, Gerry Convy is joining me. Gerry, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Dana. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. You had a good week?
Yeah, good. Busy, bits and pieces. Trying to keep the balls juggling.
Gerry, last week we talked about your role as a human performance coach, and this week I wanted to sort of look at the synergy between performance and anger. And the reason I sort of wanted to look at that subject was I think, we're in a very different world these days, quite a demanding environment for most people. And I think a lot of that's causing resentment and anger to flourish a little bit. So I thought that would be a really good subject for you and I to talk about, because obviously you're very involved in performance and working with athletes. So it's not just physical, it's also mental.
Yes, yeah, makes sense.
So, but just before we do that, actually, after our episode last week, I had a question which was actually quite relevant from Will Gowers, who wanted, it was directly at you actually, Gerry. He said, looking at all the racing drivers that are involved in sim racing, he wanted to know, are you setting any tasks, specific routines involving the use of the sim with the drivers?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, it's very topical right now, the amount of sim racing that's going on. But the drivers actually have their own sim programs from the teams that they're involved with. So with their engineers, working closely with them. So for me, they do enough work on the simulator, for them to get off it. They spend hours a day on it. So for them to get off and do some physical training, normally maybe if it's a nice little tool to use. But I think we're spending so much time on a simulator right now. I think it's nice for them to go off and do some tough training in preparation for coming back hopefully soon.
Okay, thanks, Jay. And obviously thanks to Will for that question. But let's just head back to what we're going to talk about, and it's performance and anger. And because obviously we understand that, Gerry, that competition brings out the best and the worst in athletes, and anyone actually, in fact. And some are mentally stronger than others. So if we looked at anger itself, is anger healthy?
In my experience, no. And because I've had a great amount of experience, because I had quite a lot of anger issues myself, so I'm well versed in it. I've been there in the trenches with it, and my desire, my objective to master my anger has been quite a journey. And I see it in other people, I see it on sports people, and usually it ends in disaster because it soon ravels out of control, and then that's going to affect performance. It's going to affect everything you're trying to achieve as an athlete, and that also spills into normal life. There's no place for it in business or in normal life, and once you pull the trigger, it goes bang. And times when you can have your finger on the trigger and nothing happens, but there's times when you just boom, you go, like the road rage situations that many of us have been through the years, I'm sure, or witnessed. Normally it's something that's led up to it, and if once you pull that trigger, bang, it's gone, and you have to deal with the consequences, and so do the people around you. So for me, it's up to the athlete and up to the person to try and master and get to the root of the anger so that it doesn't become an issue.
Gerry, how would you identify that in someone or even yourself?
Again, because I've been through it, and in fact for many years actually, and I didn't even, it became a part of me. It became my ID, my own ID, and the idea of other people that it's just Gerry's temper, or it's just, I said, oh, it's just my temper, but there's no justifying it. You've got to find a way of doing it to get around it. And body language is a massive thing. I can see it in people. My wife even said to me, I could tell when you were starting to get angry because your shoulders would, scrunch up, your eyes would change, your mouth would purse. You have to, you have to really study your own anger. So you have to make it like it's a project that you've got to, because it could be a total disaster for you. And for me, like any subject, you've got to study it to be able to master it and know every single feeling from it, and look at it, study it, and look at the indications within yourself as well as other people. For me, you tighten the chest, the blood literally boils, if you get to such a, I mean, everybody gets different anger. I mean, some people say anger, but for me, it was horrendous. Do you know what I mean? It was an uncontrollable rage. It was like, people said I was like the Hulk, like it was that bad, and and the aftermath is horrible, really. It takes you a few days to recover as the person, and also you can hurt people around you. So for me, it's important that you ID it within yourself quickly, and I can see it in other people when I witness it on television, sports, for example.
Could you feel it though? Is it something that you can feel it starting to happen, or is it an instant moment that suddenly you just know you're going down that road and you can't actually stop it?
Depends where you are on the totem pole of anger. I think it's, again, everybody's different. I mean, I was a very physical person and very, I've always liked fighting. I've always liked martial arts. I've always liked, very physical things. So for me, I thought they went hand in hand. That was my misperception, and it wasn't. And that's why I don't believe that those things are the only answer. They are part of the part of the journey, the part of the way of trying to master your anger, but they're not the answer. Everybody looks for the external, but it's really within yourself that you've got to find it.
And how did you pinpoint where your anger started? Because you said obviously you've got to research it, you've got to understand why it's happening. How did you get to that resolution so then you could put a plan in place to manage it?
Well, I got to the rock bottom basically, where I had to. People probably wouldn't have seen it around me, even in my work. They were only in the last 5 years I've really mastered it, and I'm 50, 3 years of age. So really, when I met my wife, she had experiences of being, herself being angry. I met her through martial arts, and she'd been through it herself with her own anger issues, because she was trying to have a baby, and she was, for their ex-husband, and they went through IVF and all the, and anybody who's ever been through that will know that that's a painful process, and it messes tremendously with your hormones. So she one of her offshoots of that was anger, and she knew how to deal with it. And she saw in me that, and like everybody I got away with it really for years, to be honest with you, because everybody knew deep down I was a good person. But she said, she helped me, she put me on the right path. And there's a saying, isn't it, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And there's teachers all through your life. It could be bad things, it could be good things, it could be, it could be somebody you meet in the street that you've never met before, and then they say something and it teaches you a lesson. I think that you've got to be open. Your mind's got to be open to really truly want to master your anger. The problem is that people don't want to look at themselves, and I didn't either, to be honest with you. I just thought, like I said, that was my ID. I was a tough guy. I was aggressive. That's just part of it. That was just it. But there's a way of mastering it, And I had a Buddhist teacher. I mean, I'm not Buddhist. I was, brought up as a Catholic, but I'm not Buddhist, but I learned so much of her. For 3 years, I worked intensively with her, and she just was incredible. She was on my doorstep, a Sri Lankan woman who worked with monks in Sri Lanka, happened to be on my doorstep in the West Midlands in England, and she helped to do it. But again, like everything, like as a coach, you can give your athletes tools, but inevitably and ultimately, they've got to do it themselves, and that's the same with ourselves. We've got to find the root of the cause and deal with it ourselves. We've got to look at ourselves in the mirror, look at ourselves in the eye, and don't walk away from that reflection, because what you see is what it is. The eyes are the window to the soul, and you've got to deal with it.
You said just a bit earlier that you can watch people now, and it can be anyone, but predominantly you're looking at sport athletes. What do you see in them that tells you that there's something else going on? What is it that you see in them that you can spot? Because obviously it's like everything, isn't it? Our knowledge is incredible, and if we've experienced something ourselves, we can generally see it in others. But what is it for you that you see in them?
Yeah, I think it's not a nice thing for me to say, to be honest, because it's almost like I can replay the movie in my mind about how I used to operate at times. Maybe a bit more aggressively than the sportsmen, to be honest with you, but at times I'm not proud to say. But I know, for example, Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player, he's a highly talented player. Doesn't seem like a bad guy at all. Seems quite a character, but he's obviously got demons, like we all have. And you can see when he's having a good day, he's having a great day. He's amazing. But then when he starts to let the demons get to him, and the anger master him rather than him master the anger, you can see him start to unravel, and he's inevitably his performance goes downhill. And it's not nice to see, but with, again, his own courage and his own admission and his own dropping of an ego to know that he needs help, then, I mean, even me as a coach, I had my coaches, my wife, my, Buddhist teacher, they were there for me, and I sought them out. And you've got to seek out the people that are going to help you. They're out there somewhere.
And I guess then, Gerry, it comes down to trust, doesn't it? Because if you want to speak to someone, you want to see them, you've got to trust them. You've got to have that trust element.
That's huge. And I like we talked about last week in the human performance side of things. It's massive. The transference is throughout life, sport, business, life, whatever. You have got to have that level of trust. And I think especially when, maybe if you see yourself as a tough guy or an aggressive guy or whatever, like you've got to leave that at the door. You've got to. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're weak. I'm stronger than I've ever been. As a person, I'm more complete than I've ever been. I'm not saying I don't have my moments, but I'm more complete than I've ever been. I'm stronger than I was when I thought I was the tough guy. That was just part of my DNA that I was like that. So I think you've got to, I see it as a great program. I know we've discussed it in the past, the SAS program on TV in the UK right now. And there's about ex-boxer on there, Tony Bellew, who's, I feel for the guy, he's obviously, and I saw myself a lot in him, how he reacts. I never did that when I was in the military, but you have to, you have to leave that at the door, the ego. And he's looking for something way outside of what he's trying. He has to look inside himself. He's trying to look for something outside, an outside challenge. And unfortunately, when he's in an aggressive environment, which you need to be when you're doing that program, that's bringing out the worst in him. It's actually, it's not actually, that's not the thing that's going to actually ultimately help him. The ultimate thing is for him to look at himself, take a breath, go back to, normal life. He's a grown man, he can do what he wants to do. I'm not telling him what to do, but I just hope that he actually does that he looks, because I think he did the interrogation with the group the other night, and he told a story, and it was a sad story, but I actually don't think that was I think it goes way back beyond it.
I mean, I've watched that program and I absolutely love it. It's brutal, but it's fantastic. But what can we do if we feel we can't control anger? Have you got any pointers that might help? Because for a lot of people at the moment, as we talked about earlier, the resentment that's turning to anger because of our environment that we're in is quite difficult for everybody, not just athletes. And if we if we're spotting any of these feelings, emotions, what can we do to control it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think now more than ever, we're going to be dealing with anger. There's going to be a lot of, coming out of the back of this situation where people are, ultimately the first number one is people losing lives. Secondly, people are losing money. I'm losing money, but we all have a choice in how we let things affect us. And that's got to be clear. We're goes back to, again, what we talked about in performance is it's about ownership. It's about only you can change it. Nobody can do it for you. And the key is, you need help. You need help from your family. If you've got a family around you, not everybody's blessed to have a family around them, but if you have got a family around you, then be honest with them and speak to them, speak to your partners, say, look, I've got a problem. I've got to deal with this anger. If it's to the degree that I had it, I'm talking about. And I'm sure there's more out there, and I think it will be building. And people will be spending more and more time with themselves now than they've ever done. And we've had plenty of distractions in the past where we can avoid doing that. Now we've got less, we're spending time with our families, more than ever, and, finances are a burden for a lot of people, yeah, including myself. But again, I'm not letting it affect me, because I refuse to do that, because I'm not letting it take me down that dark road I was down before. In fact, I said to my wife the other night, I'm not sure how I'd have coped a few years ago being in this situation with the financial pressure. Also, my wife's not earning money either. So it's like you got all these pressures that come up. And you've got to, rather than feel sorry for yourself, you've actually got to think of a solution to come out of it. And it's not easy, but there's strategies. The number one thing is to spot what your triggers are. First of all, you recruit people to help you. That's important if you can. You must find the triggers, write down the triggers, the things that annoy you. Is it the financial side of it? Is your Is it your relationship? Is it whatever it is? Just the smallest things, because like we talked about earlier with the road rage, or we indicated with the road rage earlier, it's not the road rage itself. It's the problem. It's the build up towards it. It's the story behind it. That road rage is just a reaction based on a story that came before. So you've got to write down those foundational triggers that are going to, maybe potentially kick you off into anger. Meditation's a great thing. It's a skill, and not everybody's got the patience to do it. There's breathing training. There's plenty of apps out there, but again, ultimately, you've got to be willing to do the work. Like I said, that Buddhist teacher, but I actually had to do the work on my own as well. A lot of it, with the meditation, and she taught me the skills. But there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, those are great sort of strategies. But I think the other thing, Gerry, that I was thinking about the other day, it's what you say to yourself, isn't it, as well, within your own mind. For instance, with friends and stuff, you'll be texting each other, and you'll be going, oh, this is driving me absolutely mad, and this, that, and the other. And you think to yourself, how important is it to have the right words in your mind? So yes, if you are struggling, it's not a case of thinking, oh, I must get positive. It's a bit deeper than that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because that's the big problem. I mean, you can't tell somebody to be positive if they're down on their heels, and they're like, they don't know, on their knees, and they don't know what to do with themselves, because it will just bounce off them. Telling somebody to be positive when they're at the lowest is the worst thing you can do. You've got to find ways of doing it. And like you said about the text, when people are saying, this and that, and I think I try not to have the negatives. I refuse to let the negatives get to me. If I hear anybody on the radio negative about stuff, I'll switch it off, because
I
I
agree.
can't control that.
You just have to turn, like the news at the minute. You just go, no.
I don't watch I'm aware of what's going on, and if I want to find out something specific, but the bottom line is we just have to do what we're told. It's as simple as that at the moment. We just, until just have a bit of discipline about ourselves and in that. But I think that going back to your question about it, not to you are responsible for what you read, what you watch, what you listen to, who you surround yourself with. Those are really key things. Now, that's a really important thing to write down. I mean, when I was going through some of my darkest times, I had to stop watching Game of Thrones, for example. It was a very dark thing, and it was really affecting me. I'm quite a deep thinker, and which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. So always have been, and when it's planted in your mind, these things, and because I was,
you're absolutely right. Sorry to interrupt you there, but you're absolutely right, because if you watch anything or hear anything, and something resonates in yourself about whatever trigger point might be, or whatever you're feeling, whether it's lonely, or you're just feeling resentment, or you're getting agitated, worried about money, it then is there for even longer. So you're absolutely right. That's a real key message, isn't it? Just to, as much as you can, cut that out.
I mean, it's we have the power to do it, Diana, don't we? It just goes down to discipline. People would probably fed up of hearing that word discipline, but it's that's the cornerstone. I mean, nobody wants to hear about the stuff that works. They want the fancy things, and they want somebody to do it for them. But ultimately, it is going to come down to you. And you've got the ability to switch that TV off. You've got the ability to turn the radio off, or not read the news, or not watch the news, or because you can't control. You control what you can control. The rest is just peripheral, and you can't do anything about it. It's only going to hurt you.
So really, the message is that we just have to keep basically setting ourselves, not goals, because that wouldn't be right. It can't be that black and white, but we've just got to keep reminding ourselves of the benefits, of the positive aspects that we can take when we're in that situation. But what lessons do you think we can learn?
Oh, loads. I think you can. It's the biggest learning curve of my life. I'm always as you know, I'm always a person who's looking, a studier, a person who, I'm a observer of people. I'm very interested in performance of people, human beings, just generally, not just in sport. But I think, when I look back on my life, not my life, I'm not finished yet, hopefully, but I think I'm not perfect. It's an ongoing process, and you've got to, like I say, you can't try not to suppress it. That's what I used to try and do, is push it down by punching things, kicking things, hitting people sometimes, things like that, looking for outlets for my aggression. I used to do some horrible stuff, but I used to justify it by saying they weren't nice people, but they probably weren't. But that's not going to help you. Do you know what I mean? So you can't. Anger and aggression and violence is not the answer. It really isn't. It's there's other outlets you can do. Like I said, I'm a stronger person than I've ever been in my life right now, and I'm glad I've had the journey.
Gerry, you just said obviously you're a stronger person now. So my final question really for this week is, so when you look back at where you were and now you're at present day, you're the stronger person ever. What have you taken from that experience that you've managed to turn around and deal with into today, and give that to basically clients and people around you now?
The word resilient is a very used word these days, because the situation, particularly now that we're going through, is even more resonant, resonates with more people than ever. And I think that's what you got to do. You've got to be resilient on the journey, to make sure that it's not going to happen overnight. It's a long and bumpy road, and you might lose people along the way, as in, like, they might leave you and think, I can't deal with this guy anymore. So you've got to be very, you've got to have your strategies, be strong with your strategies, be disciplined with them. If you feel that anger rising in you, take a breath, walk away, get away from the situation, because that tunnel vision will kick in, and all you'll see is the enemy. You won't, and that enemy could be anybody. It could be somebody that you love. I know, which is horrible, but it's the truth, and it's if you don't have that, if you don't come away from that situation where it's code red, and it's only going to end in disaster, get yourself away from the situation, learn it. And I've learned that about myself. My wife said the other day, I'm so proud of you how you are now, because you're a different person to watch. I've seen anger when I watch, for example, unfortunately, I don't want to, but Tony Bellew, for example, when I hate to see him getting like that, in that situation, that state, but my wife sees him in me and him, or vice versa. And she said, I'm glad you're not like that now, because it's, because it was horrible for everybody around, to do it. And I'm happy to say it, that I'm on a good path.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, Gerry, that takes courage to actually be open and honest, doesn't it? And it comes back to the thing again about trust, honesty. And as you rightly said, you've got to be honest to yourself. You've got to look in the mirror and sort of think, right, I realise there's something going on here, whoever it is, and it doesn't have to be an athlete, sports athlete, it's anyone really.
Yeah.
And what can I do to help? So for anybody that's watching this, and Gerry and I obviously have already spoken about this, if there's anyone there that has any questions, wants to ask Gerry a question or myself a question, or we can help you, then direct message, and one of us will get back to you and have a chat. Or if you want to join in our conversation, you're more than welcome. But Gerry, obviously, your wife's right. You should be proud of yourself, and it's difficult, but we're all making the most of everything that we're doing now. And actually, when you've got empathy, you want to help other people, don't you?
Exactly. And that's where I am right now. I feel again, I've come through the other side of it, if you like, and it's an ongoing process. But I guess it's been a bit like an alcoholic, and I hate to, again, reference another person who's got an addiction, but if you have a sip of that drink, that's you back on the path again, and that you don't want to go down. And that's the same with anger. You don't want to, once you've had that flash of anger, you got to cool the flames, because if you don't, it's going to take you down the wrong path. And I'm happy to help anybody who's, because I feel for anybody who's going through it. Not everybody, I'm sure there's guys out there who are violent, aggressive, that are not good, nice, but there's a lot of nice people who just got anger issues, and it doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Absolutely. Couldn't sum it up better myself. Gerry, great to talk to you again this week.